chances are that if you've been on the scary side of YouTube, you've probably seen this image pop up once or twice in some creepypasta reader's thumbnail. The image has become pretty iconic, and rightfully so. It is a scary image. I actually have been freaked out by it quite a lot up until recently, but it's also become synonymous with the creepypasta that's pretty well known called the Russian sleep experiment. All of the edgy 12-year-olds on Creepypasta Wiki probably have you believing this is a picture of a real person or some horror art piece, which I mean it kind of is. Hopefully you're not one of the people that thinks it's a picture of a real person. I'm pretty sure that most are sane enough to not think it is, but I looked it up. Just to set the record straight, it's a Halloween decoration. You can buy it for like $142. So in case you're like me and have always been thoroughly creeped out by this image, it's debunked for you now, I guess. You're probably wondering why I'm talking about that picture. The whole reason is that people believe the Russian sleep experiment actually happened. I'll get to, in a second, why it's completely illogical that people actually think this is a real thing that happened, but in case you're like me and you didn't read it until like today, or you haven't read it in this case, I'll give you a brief summary of the creepypasta. Our story begins in 1940s Russia with a supposed historical event that's come to be known as the Russian sleep experiment. Basically, these prisoners of war are falsely promised freedom in return for participation in a study of how sleep deprivation will affect the human mind, along with the room being filled with an experimental gas-based stimulant. They all basically go crazy, eat their own flesh and organs, attack people, become sadists, and in the end, the last surviving degenerate gives some edgy monologue that some emo kid probably has in their Instagram bio. Given my biased summary, you're probably wondering how someone could believe this was a real event, but keep in mind that this was written when creepypasta was kind of at its peak/beginning. I'm honestly surprised I didn't read it, considering how obsessed I was with all of the creepypastas, and that kind of faded after I actually read Jeff the Killer and realized it was trash, but, you know, that's a subject for another day. So let me get to why the Russian sleep experiment isn't all that great, despite it being somewhat of an icon in the creepypasta community. For one, while I was reading it, the grammar was driving me insane. And it was the real subtle kind of mistakes, like not putting commas in where they should be, like between your independent clauses, or like not hyphenating certain phrases, but it was there, and it kind of bothered me. It took away from the whole experience because I was focused on correcting the grammatical issues in my head than actually reading the story. Nevertheless, I persisted on in my pursuit of getting to the bottom of why so many people seem to really like this creepypasta. I mean, it has to be really good if it's an icon, right? The answer is no. It doesn't have to be good. As Jeff the Killer taught me when I was young, all because it's popular doesn't mean it's an actually good and thought out piece of art. I just found the whole story very forced and unrealistic. I mean, the descriptions were okay, I guess, but the overall tone was pretty passive, and it just had violence for no reason. It was not very realistic in the violence either. Like, at one point it described a man getting his testicles ripped out by literally just saying, like, his testicles were ripped out. It's just gore to be gore, and that never makes a good creepypasta, in my opinion. The whole reason I made this video in the first place was because I've noticed this resurgence of interest in it recently. I noticed 2 major YouTube channels release videos on it, and I was pretty surprised considering the whole story is pretty old, but as I found out upon further research, it's actually been pretty consistently talked about on YouTube. I've noticed like uploads about it pretty much like consistently throughout the years, and I never really understood why because I hadn't read it, and now I really don't understand why. To be blunt, it's just a poorly written story, and although the concept in and of itself is scary, and I'm sure some readaptations of it could probably be written better to make it more of a scary concept, at this point I think it's just so overdone that I just don't understand why nowadays, when there are so many really, really good stories out there, why people continue to say this is one of their favorite creepypastas. And all in all, if you're one of those people that thinks this is a real thing that happened, it's not, it wasn't. No government has any documentation of this, it's just not a real thing that happened. If it's on Creepypasta Wiki, it's not a real thing that happened, it's just not. Sorry if this video felt a little bit ranty, I just figured it would be kind of an easy way to get myself into YouTube, because I've been wanting to do a horror themed channel for a while and I didn't know how to get into it, and since I noticed that the Russian sleep experiment started to become a hot topic again, I decided to jump on the train and try and make a video about it. So I hope you enjoyed, and hey, hit that subscribe button.